Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of And Now You Know with Betty and Julz. I'm Betty.
And I'm Julz.
And today we're going to talk about something that we all encounter, and it's really differentiating between facts and feelings and how to move forward when there's, a space of having to make a decision or thinking about something to do that's coming up, and always being led by facts instead of, just having to like a downward spiral. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, because if I go back over my life before I went to therapy in my 40s, almost every single decision I made was based upon emotions and feelings. And not that those aren't guiding you in a direction in a lot of ways, but we just really need to pay attention to what people are telling us, showing us. Instead, I think I hear so many times women say, I married the idea of him, or I kept seeing him for the idea and
Potential.
and what I felt for him instead of looking at the facts. And it doesn't just apply to a romantic relationship, it applies to everything. I mean,
Totally agree.
I've got loved ones in my life who tell me the kind of relationship that they want to have with me. And prior to my 40s, I tended to make it all about what I felt. And now I have learned boundaries, and there are people that just require being held at arm's length for me to feel good about myself, and I'm basing that on the facts and
Right.
what they're showing me.
Right.
And if you spend time in God's word, or you read, or you just start implementing some self-care and healing, then you start understanding that boundaries are a very good thing.
Yep.
And it's very clear that you should never make a big decision, a little decision, any decision when you're emotionally hijacked.
Yeah.
You need to sit in it.
That's exactly right. That's what it made me think of. It's sometimes when something comes up, and it could be anything, like you said. It could be a job, it could be a relationship with a friend, it could be, a romantic partner, dating, whatever. And it's funny because this is where like people make impulsive decisions, and it's normally based on what feels good right now. Like, what is either a quick fix, or what feels good right now, or what do I want to do? And I think that this is where foresight comes in, where if you think about what's going on in the situation and you think about the facts, like actually look at the facts. And I think maybe even another way of saying it is, action versus words.
Actions speak louder than words.
Right.
Yep.
So, and that's true. So I'm gonna talk about this in the context of dating, because this is something that I think is such a huge issue and challenge for a lot of single people. And
especially women.
yeah, and
I
me,
really
and,
do.
and me included. I'm not just pointing the finger, because this is stuff that I've had to learn in my journey.
And I wallowed around in it for decades.
Yeah.
All about feelings.
It is. It's all about feelings. And it's so funny because you can start talking to someone and, very quickly, whether it's first, second, third date, very quickly, I know I do this. I don't know if you do this, but I know
I'm sure
for me,
I did.
in my head, I'm already thinking about what this potentially can become.
Yep.
And in my head, I'm already thinking of, this awesome life that we can build together, and all the awesome things that we can do together. And you start really painting this picture, and you start falling in love with the picture, not
idea.
necessarily, yes, the idea, not necessarily the guy. And I remember I went to a Tony Robbins conference, and what he was talking about was dating. And what he says is the way that we date, and you have said this multiple times, you have to treat dating like a job interview. And, now we have the list.
I didn't figure that out until
Right.
late in my life.
Right. Well, now we have the list.
Better
and now we
late
have,
than never.
Better late than never. But at the time that you are entertaining someone and trying to decide whether or not you want to proceed with them, I think it is really important, and not from a cold standpoint, but from a position of, do you qualify?
Yes.
Do you qualify for the open position of being my person? And if you start thinking about just the facts, let's just look at the facts. Does it fit or not? You don't have to get all emotionally, you don't have to feel sad about it or bad about it, or, this is another quote that you would say. It's like, we overcomplicate things, and that's why things are complicated, that things don't have to be that complicated.
They don't.
And so, this whole facts over feelings, it is so true. We all do it. Yeah. We all do it. It's funny. I was having a conversation with somebody about a job. This was several months ago, but a job opportunity had come up, and everything about it, you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
Everything about it seemed really cool. Seemed like it would be a great fit. Seemed like it would be super fun. The people were fun. The role itself was super fun.
And there could have been an opportunity to really network and meet some amazing people.
Yes. So all of that is true. But here's where it did not work. Where it didn't work is that at the end of the day, I had to set aside the emotion and the feelings of how fun it could have been and how cool it could have been and how whatever opportunities may have come from it. And I had to just look at black and white. What is it offering me today in terms of what does the role look like? What is the compensation plan? What is it really? Like, instead of the fairy tale of what it could be and how fun it could be, what is it really? What does it require of me? Do I want to do it? And at the end of the day, looking at the facts, it was not the right fit. Right. It was not the right fit. And I remember getting caught up in the emotion of it, but then I had to kind of come back down to planet Earth and say, not the right fit.
And that's how it is when you're dating someone, because sometimes you can be with a guy and he's really good looking and he's the perfect height, but then there's this, you've got your list made out, and there's some pretty substantial things that aren't. And listen, on your list, they're not going to meet everything. Actually, that's not true, because Jay, my husband, actually really does. But I spend a lot of time in prayer, so I highly recommend making your list and then praying over it and then surrendering that list to God and waiting for His timing for that person, because you can actually, if you are completely aware and awake and you're looking at the facts over feelings. Now, I fell hard and fast for Jay, so there were absolutely feelings there, but Jay and I had both been through so much that we're enjoying the euphoria of a new relationship, and we took our time. We dated for almost 4 years before we got married, and I'm so glad that we did, because we wanted to live everything that life could throw at us before we made that commitment and see how each other reacts. And it was very critical that we not allow ourselves to be emotionally hijacked, because we were just talking earlier, and there are so many emotional vampires out there, and they can come in the form of a child. They can come in a form of a stepchild, a friend, a boss, a clerk at the grocery store. People can just land blast you.
Yep.
And
out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. And if you don't have your emotions intact, it can flatline you for days. That was part of my problem when Jay and I first got together, is I had not really gotten a hold of my emotions the way I needed to. I was working on it, but if something happened, man, I could just be out of commission for days, honestly, especially when it came to my ex-husband and my children. They just knew how to rip my heart out of my chest. And remember, don't listen to your heart. It can be deceiving. There's a scripture that talks about the deception of your heart. I can't tell you what scripture. I'll find it and I'll say it on some other episode, or maybe we can put it in the notes about this topic. But it clearly states in scripture to not listen to your heart, because it will deceive you.
Yeah, I think there's a balance there.
Yeah.
I think that because what I'm going to say is that if you're totally from your mind, I think that there's a balance here.
There is. I mean,
There-
you
there
have
is a
to have
balance
some
here.
emotion.
Yeah, you do have to have some emotion, because I'm thinking about myself in the past operating from a place of up here.
Yep.
And it actually took me away from feeling into my intuition and letting that guide me.
That is amazing.
So
we are on opposite ends of the spectrum.
Okay, so
you were logic and I was emotion.
yeah. So when you say that about the heart, I feel like you have to be really careful with that, because
There's a balance.
Yes, there is a balance. And in my mind, I was constantly a doer, right? So I was taking care of this, I was doing that, and whatever. And so everything from the outside looked like everything was, moving forward in terms of great career, and everything looked happy and all of that from the outside. But I was completely detached from my emotions. And, I have said in the past that I learned how to compartmentalize as a young child, which is a blessing and a curse, because the blessing is you can appear like everything is awesome, and you can just go through life and actually feel quite empty. Even when you're fulfilling the things that you think, like, hitting financial goals and having an awesome career and having all these friends, you can do all these things from the outside that look awesome. And then you yourself feel like this can't be it for me. This can't be all there is to life, because then you feel that, kind of emotional emptiness. So I find that very interesting, the way you said that. I think that there's a balance, because if you're only going by your emotion, then you're not using your logic, and you're not actually looking at the situation and deciding, does that really work for me? Does that really? Because you're not. Because
You're not
just
paying
running
attention
around.
to the facts.
Right.
You're focused on really the idea.
Right. And you're glossing over.
Yep. And you just want a warm body or
Right.
something. I don't know. I don't know what you want. You want something to fill this void that's inside of you. And so really what you're saying, Betty, is that it's like a big pot and we're putting some stew together, and we need to put facts and feelings. We need just the right amount of each.
Yes.
To make really good decisions.
Yes, because I'll even say, even to further the point, there are certain professions. I'm thinking about a few, but I'm not going to call them out. So there are a few professions that I feel like are all logic.
Yeah.
And I think that there are certain people, like, let's talk about accounting, maybe technology, people that work in, certain areas of like IT or programming. All of that is logic.
Yeah.
All of that is the mind. But I think sometimes where we maybe get disconnected is that the people using all of that, they're people. They're people, they're human, they're flawed. They're usually based off of emotion, maybe not logic. And so sometimes you have to, even though you might be in a profession that is all logic, you also have to think about how that might impact
Right.
users or clients or whoever, right? So I think that there's a balance there. You're right about the whole kind of pot analogy. Yeah, it's a
balance.
I think what is the most important thing is to recognize, where are you, and are you black and white? Are you more on one side than the other, and not enough of? Because I think it's gray. I think it's gray. I think you have to be able to come from a place to make a solid decision for your life, what you want, what you're going for, what your needs are, what your wants are, what your requirements are, whatever that is. You have to be very clear and intentional about what that is first. So now you have all that in your head, which is absolutely logical mind. You have all that. And then for me, I now let myself be guided by intuition, because your gut is never wrong.
It's never wrong.
But if you are not coming from a place of stillness, you can't hear your gut.
Right.
And that is your intuition, and that is for me, my emotional feeling, kind of place. So yeah.
Yeah. Jay and I are kind of going through a situation right now where we're trying to, we've got a business idea, and it's one of Jay's dreams. And so with a dream comes some emotion, and we had an opportunity to purchase a piece of equipment that is very difficult to find. And we've gotten the LLC all laid out. We've got the whole business plan. We're ready to go. We've got the money ready to go. And we called and said, okay, we're going to fly out and look at this piece of equipment. And but we've been praying, and we're a big fans of surrender and believing in asking God if this is not his purpose to close the door.
Absolutely.
And we know that if that door gets closed, then he's got something much bigger and better in mind for us. Well, Jay and I were talking about it just the other night. And I said, listen, we just need to pray about the door being opened or closed. And then we just say, I trust you, Jesus. And we just know that if this plays out, then we're going in the right direction. And if it doesn't, then God closed the door. Well, the next morning, Jay reached out and said, when can we come out to look at this piece of equipment? And the guy said, oh, I've got to put you on pause, yada, yada. And from an emotional standpoint, a feeling standpoint, it's just this huge disappointment. You want to push back and you want to fight and go, tell me, we'll give $20,000 more than the other person. But that's not what we prayed for. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so we have to let the facts, and the fact is that we prayed and asked God, and we have to believe that that's why that happened. And I mean, it's just so intertwining. It's really interesting.
It is. And
it's so cool.
And
really.
what that makes me think of is, if you come from a place of surrender, which most people don't.
They
but
don't. And it's tricky. It's hard.
It's a scary thing to actually commit to it. But here's what my point is. If you come from a place of surrender, then you can pray that prayer. You can ask God for divine guidance, and you are okay with whatever the outcome is, with whatever shows up. If you're not coming from a place of surrender, you won't even pray that prayer. You won't, because you're already afraid of it going one way or the other, because you're already so committed to one. And I'll give you an example. We're both realtors. And one of the things that's really interesting, people get super emotional when it comes to buying a home. And I get it, because I have purchased multiple homes and sold them also, so I understand.
And it's a big transaction.
It's a big transaction.
Biggest transaction of your life.
So I get the emotion, but here's the thing. Never fails when people get into bidding wars, when people, are trying to force something to happen that isn't meant for them. It never fails that if you do pay $80,000 over ask, which people have done, which I don't recommend, but it happens.
That's one of the reasons why the market's kind of wonky right now.
Yeah. So when people are doing whatever it takes, because I have been guilty of this when I was younger, you force yourself to do whatever it takes, whether it's buying a house or a relationship or whatever it is, and then later something happens and you think to yourself, if I could go back, I would change that decision, because it didn't turn out the way I expected, because it wasn't meant for you to begin with, and you forced it and you made it happen. Now, on the contrary, I have worked with clients where they have wanted a house and the offer wasn't accepted, or something happened. Actually, there's a client of mine in McKinney, and this is what happened. We were under contract. We went to the design center. Everything was done for this house that they were building, and literally a couple months into it, we found out that there were a few things that weren't going to work out the way that they had hoped, and literally, we decided to let that house go, pick another plot, pick another floor plan, and start over.
Wow,
now, let me tell you, if that was anybody else, yes, I understand people freak out. People are like, no, I don't want this. This is supposed to work out. People get all sorts of emotional in the middle of that. But let me tell you what ended up happening. They got a better lot, a better house with better everything. And they, even though it took a little longer because they ended up having to wait like 6 or 7 additional months, but everything was so much better about the new house that they ended up with, that they have moved in. They actually just celebrated their 1-year anniversary. And that is not the only story that I can share, but that is the most recent one. And I feel like if you look at something and if you feel like you have to force it, it's just not for you. I feel like
it's not.
That is the whisper. That is the brick.
That
is the gut. That's
the Holy Spirit.
Yep. That is the intuition. That is the thing letting you know, change course, redirection. I feel like if more people paused and think through it rather than being so hasty. I had a friend that always talked about haste makes waste.
It does.
And there's also another quote that is the fastest way to get there is slowly.
Yeah.
And all of that stuff sounds kind of counterintuitive, and people are in such a rush to do all this stuff.
My gosh.
But I'll tell you, I have made so many mistakes along the way. There are so many decisions that I made out of impulse, out of emotion, out of not even gathering all the information. It was just like, yes, I want that. Yes, I want to do that. Yes, I want to do that. Blah, blah, blah.
We were like that when we met.
Yeah, well,
About a lot of things.
And there are several things that, give me a redo and I would change the decision.
Yep, me too. I want to go back to real estate because I was guilty because I am truly an emotional being and I really have to struggle. I struggle with it. I'm better than I used to be, but on the day of inspection, I would have so much anxiety. I just couldn't hardly even breathe. I was like, oh my gosh, what if this, what if that? And Jay was looking at me like I was a two-headed monster. He was like, what is going on? What is wrong with you? And then I would get that inspection report back. And instead of presenting the facts, I presented my feelings. And I was like, I wouldn't buy this house. And Jay was like, you have to stop doing that. You suck at real estate. Because my job as their agent was to present the facts. What I felt about it really had nothing to do with the transaction. I did stop doing that, by the way. It was just early on. But I'm a very emotional being, and it has crippled me in a lot of areas in my life. And, it's like, you want to get married? Sure. You want to have a baby? Sure. You want to get a divorce? Yes. Just didn't pull my brain into it at all.
Yeah.
I just went by the emotions and what was going on at the time and flitting around like a little butterfly, and that does not work.
Yeah.
That does not work.
So I guess I'm kind of in the middle, because I've had certain instances where I've been very just emotional and impulsive. But when it comes to, I have made a lot of mistakes in business too. But when it comes to certain things, I think, several roles that I was in where I had to deliver, because I remember we had conversations about this. I'm really good at delivering bad news.
She really is.
And it's I would say that this is where I can take the emotion and the feelings out of it. And I still always want to lead with, being kind and respectful, but I can deliver bad news. I don't have an issue talking about conflict. When I'm hiring people or firing people or doing all the, the everything that, that comes with managing people, that's where I actually feel like I excel really well.
One day
I'm really good at that.
Several years ago, we were in her office talking, and she was like, oh, well, I got to go fire so-and-so. And I was like, oh my God, are you scared? And she was like, no, why would I be scared? Those are the facts.
Those are the facts.
Those
and see,
are the facts.
This is where I lead with facts. And at the end of the day, if you're in sales, which, we are, if you're in sales, that, you can be a great person. You can have a great personality. You can be super fun to be around. But when you're in sales, nothing else matters but the numbers. And so numbers don't lie. And so for me, this is where it's very clear for me, and I can separate feeling from the facts. And so if I'm in the role of having to hold people accountable to the numbers, then I very easily can hold people accountable to the numbers, and I will still be, I can still love on them and coach them and whatever, but
they don't always.
But they don't
there
always.
There were times that she'd call me and she'd be like, eek, that did
not
not go well.
Oh, yeah, because here's the thing. When you have to deliver that kind of information, that kind of news to somebody, now they're leading with emotion.
They're
leading with their feelings.
Yeah.
And I try to be as gentle as possible, but, I can understand the position of feeling like, nobody wants to fail, and nobody wants to be fired, and nobody wants to be told that they're bad at something. And that's essentially what I was doing.
But sometimes it's
in the
not
nicest way possible.
Sometimes it's not that they were bad at it even. It was just the way the market was at
the
time.
Most of the time.
They were bad at it.
Most of the time, anytime I fired anybody, it's because they were bad at it.
Yeah.
But I always felt like, because I had been a recruiter in a previous life, and so I always felt like, even though I'm letting them go from this job, I also felt like that could be a great career counseling session. And I would tell people, let me tell you what you are good at.
Yes.
This is what you're good at, and this is what I actually see for you for the future. And so that is a great example of facts over feelings.
Yes, it is. It is. And if I was going to get fired, I would want to get fired by Betty, but she always like, you're not getting fired.
Oh yeah, no, she wasn't getting fired, not at all. No, I've never had to fire her. No, nor would I, because she's actually really good at what she does. So, but anyway, yeah.
So, really, just be aware of what it is you're doing. I mean, are you truly, this just comes down to being accountable to yourself.
Yeah.
And avoiding getting yourself in a mess because you are letting your emotions override the truth.
You know, that's a good way of putting it, because it really is. If you're accountable to yourself, and if you're truly honest with yourself, and you look at yourself in the mirror, like you always say, if you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're truly thinking about whatever the situation is, does this work for me? Does it meet my needs? Does it bring me, further along in the journey, wherever I'm trying to get to, who I'm trying to become? If you're asking yourself those questions, and, I live in surrender. You don't have to live in surrender, but still ask the questions. Still
I
be
recommend
accountable.
that you live in surrender.
I think you should.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say should, because I don't like the shoulding all over yourself, but
it's hard to get to that place of surrender, though.
it is.
It really is, but it does bring a peace.
It really does.
Everything.
Yeah.
But when I reflect over the messes in my life, it's all because I just decided to ignore the facts. I really did. I believed the idea, and I believed my heart. I believed my feelings, and I thought that I was in love, and that I'm speaking in relationships right now. I believe that you need to date someone for at least 2 years before you get married. I didn't several times, but if you give it the time that it needs and give it a chance to get out of that euphoric stage and that stage where you just really can't think about anything but that new love in your life, let it get to a place where it's not so crazy. That's when you can tell if you want to spend the rest of your life with someone or not. Because the rest of your life is a long time. And so you want to make sure that it's not based on lust. And I've gotten myself into some pickles with that one. So, and I can tell you guys, I am dealing with the consequences of that. And that's the part that I want to stress the most, is if you are led by your emotions and you are just blatantly ignoring the facts, I can promise you, you can be forgiven, you can move on in your life, but those consequences are going to come up and bite you in the butt at any given moment.
Especially, starting, for example, if you accept a job and it's not the right fit, you could always quit the job, right? And I highly would advise that once you get into a role, because we've done this before, once you get into a role and you realize that it's not the right fit or it's not the right company that you want to be aligned with, rip the Band-Aid off. Yeah. Don't waste 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years somewhere that is not going to lead you to where you're trying to get to. So I'm just going to say rip the Band-Aid off for that. Now, when it comes to relationship, marriage, dating, whatever, this is where I feel like you have to be really careful with the decisions that you're making, because when you are in your chapter 2 or your chapter 3, now you have to think about what comes along from the previous decisions. That means children. So you can't just throw yourself into the next thing, right? Now you have to actually consider, it doesn't just affect me anymore. Now it affects other people. Yeah. So I do think that you need time. You need time. You need to look at your facts. You need to operate from a place of, well, really, yes, from facts, but also from knowing. You have to know, what are you trying to accomplish first? What do you want? What do you not want? What aligns with you? What do you believe in? What are your values? All of those things are so important. Don't gloss over it. I feel like in the world of dating, people jump in and it's again with the lust, lust usually is the leader, right?
Yeah.
Leading into something.
And lust
But
is not love.
lust is not love, but what do you actually have in common? Can you have a conversation? What's important to you? Can you communicate that? What is something that maybe that some trauma that you have from your past that in a relationship need to feel absolutely able to be comfortable sharing and vulnerable and all of those things? Why don't we talk about those things? Why don't we talk about the real reasons? Actually, there's an interview, and now I'm going to throw, there's an interview that Viola Davis did. And she was talking about her husband, how she met her husband, how she prayed to God about her husband, the things that she was looking for. That interview is so fascinating and so amazing. And they've been together now for 20 plus years. But it was so awesome hearing her because she was very clear.
Yeah.
She was very clear. She knew what she was looking for. She did pray. She did ask God, and she waited for the right partner. But she knew exactly when she met him and they started to get to know each other. She already knew what she was looking for, which is why she knew he checked all the boxes. Yeah. If you don't know what you're looking for and you're just running around town going by, just feeling an emotion, just because you're lonely, this is where we say you're better off single. You're better off single and go to therapy and figure it out first. And know what you want, know who you are, and know what your standards are and what you're not willing to compromise on.
And if you don't have that mapped out, you're just going to keep repeating until you learn. I mean, that's why, I just couldn't stay out of that hot pan, man. I just had to keep jumping in there, but it was because I was codependent. It was because I was very, very broken. And when I had a gutful, I decided, I finally learned the lesson that it's better to be alone than to be alone with someone, because I just got so tired of begging. And in a marriage, I got tired of begging for whatever part that they had shown me that I ignored because I thought I loved them so much, that I was the one. I was the one who saw all their gifts. I was the one that could love them the most. I was the one who could change them with my love. They don't want to change. You better block them exactly. You better recognize exactly who they are showing themselves to be. Those are the facts. Because, I'm just being accountable. I knew the facts, and I did it anyway. And it turned into a big, huge mess. And don't lead your life by emotions completely. So
Yep.
it just doesn't work out, and you just always end up being hurt, and you feel kind of like a seed blowing around on parched land. You can't ever get rooted in anything. And my stepdad used to always say, "Take it easy, Greasy. You got a long way to slide." And that was my problem. I just wouldn't give things the time that they needed for the facts to filter through my feelings. And I finally learned that lesson, and gave it the time.
Yep.
So
today's episode is sharing a little wisdom from the mistakes that we've made, and very, very, very clearly, the number one thing that I would encourage you to do is to really learn about you. And when you come from a place of self-love, this is where I think the mistakes happen. When you don't come from a place of self-love, when you haven't taken the time to figure out who you are, what your needs are, this is when you are drifting in the breeze doing God knows what.
Yeah.
But if you do take the moment, take the time to invest in yourself, which is my number one recommendation for everybody. That is the thing that I absolutely value the most, is taking time. Now, of course, I also live from a place of surrender, and I absolutely do want to, meditate and pray and be still so that you can actually hear your intuition and hear that voice speak to you clearly. But honestly, if you are not valuing yourself, loving yourself, spending time with yourself, and, with personal growth and development and all of that for yourself, that's where you get in trouble, because you don't know who you are, and then you end up falling for everybody else's idea or plan of what you should be, and you don't know who you are.
Yeah, and if helping yourself includes therapy, go in there and talk about your childhood and give it your truth and let them dissect that for you. Because I know a lot of people who are in they're adults now, but they're still living in that past, and that past is still controlling them, even though it's not here anymore. So go and clean out the attic and just learn how to give yourself the gift of being your authentic self and who God made you to be. And you can take your darkness and your shame and all the things that you're not proud of in your life, and you can share that. That's your story, and you can share that with other people, even if it's one-on-one, or you want to be crazy like we're being and blast it out to the world for everybody to see. I'm good with that. So, yeah, just listen to your heart a little bit and listen to the facts too. So,
Yeah.
I think that's a wrap.
I think that's a wrap. Well, as we always say, you can always send us an email. Our email address is hello@bettyandjulz.com, BETTE.
And I'm JULZ.
And we also have a comment section down below where if you want to post feedback or let us know if you're enjoying the podcast, which hopefully you are, and hopefully you're also sharing it with some friends, be sure to subscribe. And we are so grateful and we so appreciate you spending a part of your day with us. And we will see you on the next one.
Bye.
Bye.